Hi, welcome to Chamber Chats. I'm Bruce Williams, the CEO of the Greater Victoria Chamber of Commerce, and I'd like to begin by acknowledging that I live and work in the territories traditionally inhabited by the Coast Salish nations, in particular the Lekwungen-speaking nations of the Songhees and the Esquimalt. We record these, of course, in the studios of Czech Television, and Chamber Chats is brought to you by Island Savings, a division of First West Credit Union, and C-SPAN Victoria Shipyards. This year, in addition to being the year after the year that was, so 2021, is our year of recovery, but this is also a year when Canada will conduct a census. It happens every 5 years. So I want to talk right off the bat here with the guy who's in charge of all that. Geoff Bowlby is my guest. He's the Director General for the 2021 Census for Statistics Canada, rather. Geoff, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
We're going to get into why this is such a pivotal and important time for a census to happen, but they do happen every 5 years. Why do we do a census? Very simple question off the top. Or is it simple?
It isn't simple. It is a complex project with lots of uses and lots of important uses. The Census of Population, like we like to refer to it at Statistics Canada, is more than just the population count on the city limit sign. There are so many important uses of the information, and that's why it's so important to get everybody to complete their census form.
We've heard talk in the past, most of it on the political side, about a long form versus a short form. Don't want to get into that, but is this one or the other of those?
It is both. So in every 5 years when we run the census, we do the short form and the long form at the same time. What will happen in 2021, 3 out of 4 households will get the short form, 1 out of 4 gets the long form.
Okay. So the census really is a way for us to get a snapshot, if you will, or a digital image, if we're going to be more current, of what has happened over the last 5 years in our country and some indication of where we're going. What's gathered in a census? Like, what sort of data are you looking for?
At its base, it is calculating the population of Canada. That is its number one and fundamental role. So we count the population, we characterize that population according to age group, sex, this year gender, other characteristics such as education levels. It also provides other content such as Indigenous content. We have some content related to education. We have labor market information, tremendous amount of labor market information, as well as income and other characteristics of the country, such as the housing conditions that we have in this country.
So in simple terms, again, how is that used when you gather the data? You've got it. It's going to take you, I guess, the better part of this year to gather it. What do you do with it then?
Once it's gathered, we gather it from about April, late April to the end of July. We'll be actually enumerating the population. That's when it'll be obvious to everybody listening today that we're conducting the census. After that's done, there's a process of crunching the numbers, and then we produce them. We'll be disseminating the data throughout 2022. The data get used in so many important ways. Let's get back to that fundamental population piece, and I can talk about some of the other stuff in a minute. But that population piece, anything that you hear about that is on a per capita basis, you hear that term per capita. Vaccine distribution, for example, per capita, that is census-based. It means per person. Other things that get calculated on a per person basis are the major multi-billion-dollar financial transactions that take place between the federal government and the provincial and territorial governments. Those are done on a per person basis for health and social transfers. Now, there's other information that the census helps us provide a really rich, exciting portrait of who we are as Canadians. It's not just the population numbers, but also things like the labor market information. I know that your chamber members might be interested to know what is the unemployment rate in Victoria? How's that compare to Vancouver? How does that compare against the rest of British Columbia? What are the unemployment rates in parts of the Victoria area? So we can see what parts of the city have the most jobs and which have the least number of jobs. That kind of basic labor market information can only be provided by the census, which can provide a regional perspective that our ongoing programs at Statistics Canada, such as the labor force survey or our income surveys, they can't provide at such a local, small area level. We can also target populations. We can see, okay, what's the nature of the Indigenous population on Vancouver Island? Are they working? Do they have good jobs? What's the level of education? What are the languages that they speak? These sort of basic pieces of information about who we are as Canadians and as people that live in British Columbia can only be provided by the census.
We actually at the Chamber use data from Stats Canada on a pretty regular basis. When you talk about the unemployment rate, for example, in this region, once the pandemic got underway, this region went from having the lowest unemployment in Canada to pretty much having the highest in just a matter of months. Being able to track that through data that was released by Stats Canada was very important to us. So that on an ongoing basis is going to be a huge factor. And I don't want this to sound overly simple again, but how has COVID impacted this process? How has the pandemic impacted what will happen in the census process?
Well, besides me running the census from my front porch, that you're seeing today, right. We've had to make tremendous number of changes to the census. This time last year, when we all left and went home, regrouped, we looked at our field operations, the plans that we have for 2021, those that will take place this spring and summer, and realized that a lot of it wouldn't work in a COVID context, and immediately went out to change those plans so that we produce the high quality data that you expect as Canadians. These data are so important, but at the same time, making sure that it's a safe operation, safe not only for the tens of thousands of employees that we hire for the census, but also for the thousands and thousands of homes that we have to visit. We've got a safe operation. We had to change and do things such as provide masks and hand sanitizer for every enumerator that goes door to door. We're doing things like we're increasing the amount of internet response. We're hoping that more and more Canadians respond online because that's the safest and best way to do so. Or request from us a paper questionnaire, or give us a call and we'll do it over the phone so that we minimize the amount of contact that we have with Canadians when we go door to door. That door-to-door activity, I should mention, when we do enumerate and we ask people in Victoria and across the country the questions of the census, if they haven't responded already themselves, we'll do that outside. We'll do that outside in the fresh air. Much easier to do in a place like Victoria than it is to do in the high part of Canada, in the northern regions of Canada. But nevertheless, across Canada, we'll be conducting all of our business outside.
Yeah, I want to talk about the privacy issue as well concerning this. Technology is going to make a big difference in the overall COVID impact as well with the upcoming census. We're going to talk about that. Geoff Bowlby is our guest on Chamber Chats. He is the Director General for the 2021 census being conducted by Stats Canada. So there is still going to be some door-to-door stuff, as you mentioned. But I got to think that with technology, the way that you and I are on this platform right now, and our phones are a big part of our lives, all the new platforms and technology must have made this much more streamlined. And in fact, much more capable.
Absolutely. And if there's some silver linings in the pandemic, I think we have all gotten used to technology more than ever before. Ordering things online, communicating, socializing online. And so for that reason, we believe that we'll get record internet response on the census. Canadians, for some reason, love their census. They love responding online to the census. And we actually have a world record for responding online amongst major nations in the world.
Really?
Back in 2016, yes, back in 2016, almost 7 in 10 households responded online to the census, beating every other major country. This time around in 2021, we expect 8 in 10 dwellings or households across the country to respond online. We also expect about 1 in 10 to request from us a paper questionnaire and respond on their own, mail it back to us. So it's only 1 in 10 dwellings, 1 in 10 households where we expect to actually go door to door in 2021. That will be the smallest percentage that we've ever had to go door to door on.
We referred earlier to this being kind of a snapshot of who we are, and I bet you that's a big part of the engagement that Canadians are so involved because they do want to know. We are proud of our country. We're proud of who we are and what we're doing. So the information that will be gathered now will then be compared to what happened in 2016, just as what will happen in 2021 will be looked at again in 2026. What are you anticipating? I mean, aside from the obvious, what sort of changes do you think might be most prevalent now compared to 5 years ago?
There will be population growth. That's a given. It's just a question of how much. We'll see some impact on the labor market of the pandemic. Um, the census is taking place in 2021, and most of the questions that we ask on the questionnaire refer to 2021, but some of the questions actually refer to 2020. This was part of the plan before the pandemic. The questions on the labor market, the questions on where you lived a year ago compared to where you live now, questions on the income data that we produce from the census comes from your tax record. Those will be in reference to 2020. So we will have a snapshot like we've never had before of the pandemic and its impact on labor markets and on Canadians' income because of that reference to 2020, the year 2020 that was. 2021, we will have the information on education. Canadians are likely to show continued increase in the levels of education that they have. We'll have information for the first time on a number of variables, things that we've never tried to measure before. We've never asked a question of whether you're a veteran or not. So this is something that's new. We'll know, are veterans in Canada disadvantaged in the labor market? Are they attending school? Are they receiving income support? Are they, all of these questions can be answered from the census for the first time. We've never asked this question before. Other questions that we're asking a new gender question. We'll have the continued use of the traditional sex question, are you male, female? But we're also asking, what is your gender, allowing Canadians to choose for themselves. We're adding questions on, some additional questions on Indigenous, First Nations, as well as Métis questions. So there's a whole lot of new information that's going to come from the 2021 census as well. Brand spanking new. It'll be very exciting to see when we release those data in 2022.
There are going to be people, I'm not going to isolate the West Coast necessarily for these folks, but there are those who have a basic mistrust of this kind of process, basically even on the lines of privacy. But there is a guarantee that this is all completely private and confidential, right? Tell me about that.
Absolutely, absolutely. So there's a law called the Statistics Act that tells me what I can do and what my colleagues can do. And we can collect this information, but we cannot divulge it to anyone outside of our organization. Even when we collect this information at StatCan, we keep it on a needs to know basis only. Okay, so if you fill out your paper questionnaire, it's received at a paper processing area of StatCan that I won't go to. I don't need to see those paper forms. So we keep it on a needs to know basis. We have high security on our IT networks. We have rules in place within that Statistics Act that mean that if I break any of these rules or any of my colleagues break any of these rules, we're faced with severe discipline, loss of job. Also, there are penalties that go up to and including jail time for those of us who do see your personal information. So we take it so seriously at Statistics Canada, not only for the legal reason, but for the simple reason that it's the right thing to do. We need to keep this information private, secure, and confidential.
So to put something else in perspective, when it comes to the importance of what the census is and what it does, you provide local data, regional data, national things as well, so that we can see a snapshot of who we are as Canadians compared to with each other. Where does this put us on a world stage, the fact that we're this engaged and this robustly involved with our own census? How does that enhance our situation with the rest of the world?
All countries run a census. Not every country runs a census every 5 years. That's one of a handful of major countries that does that. Australia is another one. Other countries, though, such as United States, UK, they run their censuses on a 10-year cycle. So we have some of the freshest and most available data of any census-taking nation across the world. Those information provide a sort of fundamental infrastructure that's important for the nation. It's important for the country. Having good population data means efficient decision-making by business folks, by individuals, by governments. Knowing where we can locate schools, where we can locate businesses, benefits us all, benefits all of our communities. And our census data in Canada are some of the highest quality, I might say of the highest quality around the world, for us to allow us to make these efficient, good decisions on behalf of Canadians.
I want to talk next about how the census reports and accounts for where we all live. We're talking today about the 2021 Census of Canada with Geoff Bowlby, who's Director General for the Census for Statistics Canada. Over the course of the pandemic, we've seen this, I don't want to call it a migration, but a very concerted move of a lot of people who are migrating to the suburbs and even going back into some sort of rural life after generation and generation of people leaving rural life to move to urban life. Anything you anticipate there that maybe the cores of some of the major cities are going to see a decrease in their population base?
Could be. We'll see. It's hard to know. I don't like to speculate too deep into the numbers. I will say that the way that we enumerate the population, the way that we count people where they live, is based on where they usually live, not where they might actually be. Okay, so there's two different ways to count the population. It's where you are now on Census Day and on May 11th, or it's where you usually reside on May 11th. And so somebody who might have, for example, temporarily relocated to their cottage as a result of COVID, but who considers their usual residence back in the city, will be counted in their usual residence in the city, not at their cottage. So it would have to be more of a permanent move that we would measure in the census to be counted the way that we count things. You have to count people once and only once, and you have to use strict rules. Our rule is usual residence.
Okay. So to go back to the thing that it's not, the census isn't just about how many people we are, but it's where we are and how that impacts the economy and the local resilience and all the rest of it. There's always these really cool things that come out, like Montreal, Toronto, and Vancouver are the three biggest cities in Canada. There's a very significant percentage of Canadians living in those three places alone, isn't there?
Mm-hmm. Yes, there is. We're very urban in Canada. Like you said before, if you went back to some of the early census records, we have data that go back to 1871, you'd see that we were a rural population. But over time, we've migrated out of the rural areas and towards the cities where there's jobs and opportunity. As we have new Canadians that arrive, they tend to arrive and land in the cities. So we have a good proportion of our population. I don't have the exact number, but you're quite right. Montreal, Toronto, Vancouver, followed by Ottawa, I think is the fourth largest city. We've got Calgary and Edmonton close behind. We've got major urban centers in this country that have evolved over the years. That portrait can be told through the census and these data that are so rich that go back to 1871.
So, of course, here in BC and on Vancouver Island in the last many years, we've seen a huge migration of people that come to live here in Victoria, Vancouver. It's for the climate and for the lifestyle. So comparatively speaking, for example, if I'm not mistaken, British Columbia's population has doubled in the last 20 years, whereas the Maritimes has stayed about the same. What does that mean? Like how do those figures then translate into action?
So what we have to do is account for in our census the operation. Okay, so every year that we run the census from one cycle to the next. The last time we ran it was in 2016. In 2016, the population of the country was smaller than it is now. That means that our operation has to be bigger, and we have to forecast how much bigger the census is going to be. And we have to anticipate where we need to enumerate people. And yes, there is this sort of westward shift in our focus over the years where not only British Columbia, but Alberta has had strong population growth, certainly in the years leading up to 2016 and probably the years after 2016. So that means more enumerators, more activity, more work in British Columbia as well as in Alberta. That's important. If we didn't do that, we wouldn't have the high quality data for British Columbia and other parts of the country that have grown like they have. If we didn't try to anticipate how much bigger the operation and how much bigger the population is.
Yeah, I always get excited by the immigration numbers too, because it first of all diversifies our culture, makes us more multicultural, makes us more interesting, frankly. But that's a huge source of workforce. And here in Greater Victoria, we have a problem keeping workers here because of the cost of living and other factors that are in play. But the immigration numbers are a huge factor in us growing our workforce. I have to anticipate those numbers will be up, despite the fact that the border has been closed for a year.
Right. I don't know enough about what might have happened in the last year, but certainly the long-term trend is that the immigration is the driving force behind our population growth. Less and less is it the natural population growth, and more the census tells us it's the immigration to Canada and the net immigration. So we refer to a term of net immigration, that's immigration minus the emigration, the people that leave Canada to go to other countries. That net immigration is positive, it's growing in Canada, and it's a bigger proportion of the overall population growth over time.
So we can be involved in this process, right? We as Canadians can engage with Statistics Canada to be a part of this whole process. Tell me about that. You're hiring.
Yes, we're hiring. We're hiring tens of thousands. It's a huge operation across the country. We need 32,000 enumerators and their supervisors to work in every corner of the country, from Halifax to Victoria, all the way up to Alert. We're hiring in the most remote parts of the country, in every little community. Here in Victoria, we need about 400 people to work for us between the months of April and to about the end of July. Those jobs you can apply on census.gc.ca. It's really easy. You go to that website, you click on Apply Now. It only takes a few minutes, and we want to encourage as many people to apply as possible. All we're looking for is that you're at least 18 years of age, you're a legal resident or legally able to work, I should say, in Canada, that you have a flexible schedule. You can work some weeks as few as 20 hours a week, but some weeks as many as 40 hours a week, that you're ready to work some weekends and evenings. If you've got that kind of flexibility, we'd love to see your application. The rate of pay is good. It's $18 an hour or so. It's just under that. Like I said earlier, the hours range from 20 to 40 hours a week. So for many people, it's a great part-time job. For others, it's more of a full-time gig on a short period of time, and provides great employment especially in these difficult times right now, where some jobs are hard to find.
Geoff, we're going to catch up with you when the results of the census come out, and we will get an update from you on what has happened during this year of recovery for all of us. We hope. We very much appreciate your time, and thanks very much for being with us today. Geoff Bowlby is the Director General for the 2021 Census for Statistics Canada. Geoff, thanks very much.
Thank you, Bruce.
For more episodes of Chamber Chats, go to checknews.ca/podcasts.